Hello and welcome to another Crafter's Toolbox. In this video, I'm going to share with you my #1 tip for successfully using masking fluid or frisket when I am masking out my designs. And if you haven't guessed it yet, it is these tools right here. These are some tools that I found on Amazon that are basically designed for molding and sculpting clay. But they work great for masking fluid because they have these great soft silicone tips. On the large ones, that's just the silicone tip on the one end, and they have some different shapes, which will help you get into different places on your designs. And then there's also a set of small ones that have these metal nibs on the end, as well as those same shapes, but just in a smaller size. I find that I typically use these two, the ones that kind of look like just a pencil end. And then I use these little metal nibs on the ends to make freeform dots or to also get into smaller spaces, just kind of depending on how I'm feeling that day. So let me show you how this works. I did use it on this card design, and I will show you that you don't always have to fill in the whole space. You can just fill in perhaps the edge or close to the edge, so that way if you're doing a background, you don't accidentally wash into it. And then on this one, I used it to block out the entire vase and all of the flowers here, so that way the background didn't uh, go over those areas. Okay, so masking fluid, if you're not familiar with it, is a latex-based product. So if you're allergic to latex, you probably don't want to be using it or use it very carefully. And as you can see here, it's just this rubbery material that's actually in a liquid form. And it's super easy to apply, especially using these tools. So there's two ways that you can do this, especially if, like I said, if you're working a background and you just need to make sure that you're not going into the edge like of this flower. I would just get some of this on here and just go around the edge like so. That way I've got a nice barrier. And even if you want, you can cover up the black line or the line of your stamp. And that's good enough. You can also color in the whole thing if you want. So you can just bring this in, and it dries pretty quickly, so you don't want to go over areas that you've already covered. It will pick up pretty easily. So those are kind of your two choices, especially when working with bigger images. If you want to save yourself some time, you can just do the edges, and that's what I did with this design here. I just went around the edges so that I could work the green background without being afraid of getting any of the color in there. Or you can work the whole big area. Say I was working on the flower and I wanted to do some really fun thing, but I wanted to make sure that all these little dots didn't get covered. I could use the little tip on the end here, and I could just kind of spot those in if I wanted to. The larger one is really great, like I said, for doing dots kind of free form on the background if you wanted to. So the key to using masking fluid successfully beyond the tools here is to make sure that everything is dry. You want to make sure that your stamped image is dry, and you want to make sure that the liquid is dry after you've applied it here. Otherwise, it will lift up prematurely, or you'll get colors stuck in there, and you're not going to be happy if you spent all this time masking something out only to allow color to bleed behind it or for it not to be completely cured. So the good news is you can use a heat gun in between. So I'm going to finish up just going around the edge here, and I'm going to hit it with a heat gun. Now that this is dry, you can maybe see that it's taken on a little bit of a off-white hue. There is masking fluid that comes in colors, which would help you to be able to see exactly where you've applied it, and that could be pretty helpful. But for the most part, I can see exactly here where I've applied it. So now I'm just going to go ahead and just take a brush and do some watercoloring. The paper that I'm using is a multimedia paper. So this works on multimedia paper, it works on watercolor paper, it works on regular paper. So I'm trying to be careful because I just did do the edges of the flower. So you might see some advantages and disadvantages here. If you're going to do kind of a sloppy background like this, you might want to cover the whole thing. Um, just to be careful. Or if you think you're pretty in control, you don't have to worry about it, then don't worry about it. So now I've done a whole background here, and you can see here, like I put the masking here, it's just hanging out. It's going to come right off. So, and I went right over those little dots here. This can go ahead and get dried. So you can spritz, you can do all sorts of things as long as you've got the masking cover at it. You can do any kind of application over it and not have to worry about what's underneath. All right, now that I'm done with the watercoloring and everything is completely dry, I used my heat tool to make sure everything was 100% dry. I'm ready to go ahead and remove the masking fluid. Now I can either use my finger here to just peel it off, but if you have gunk on your fingers, you might not be happy with doing it that way. You might end up with discoloration underneath. You might have an ink transfer. So you can always use an adhesive eraser. That's just going to pick those up, and you can see these are where I had those little white dots just randomly placed. So that's a cute, cool effect. Or, of course, let's just get this off of the rest of our design. Now, here you can start it, and sometimes you're able to just peel the whole thing off or come close. So once you have this all peeled off, you're ready to continue on with the rest of your project. And if you need to apply more because you're going to be masking off a different part of the project, you can do that. But if you're finished, you can go ahead and clean off your implements. And the easy way to do that is to just use your fingers and peel it right off. It's so much easier than using a brush because a lot of times this sticks to the brush, especially if you don't use soapy water ahead of time. And even with the soapy water, I find that it doesn't always come off there either. So I hope you enjoyed learning about the tools that I use for my masking fluid and exploring ways that you can use this in your projects. I hope to see your projects out on my Facebook page. I love to see what you do with these tips that I provide you at the Crafter's Toolbox. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel and join me again for more here at the Crafter's Toolbox. But until next time, happy crafting.